cold calling scripts.
Yes.
Are you now doing most of the calls yourself, or with your team? Do you have some people who have kind of stuck to the scripts now?
And what does your team look like?
Yeah. So
you don't have to name them all.
Yeah. Thank you. We're a family business. And so we actually run really 4 different businesses. We have an acquisition business, we have a construction business, we have a property management business, and then we have a fund, a private equity fund. And so family members oversee different portions of that. And it's, my son-in-law runs property management with my daughter. My son, Luke, I think you guys have both met, runs acquisitions. Paul, my other son, runs our rehab stuff. My wife and I run the fund as far as oversight. Okay. We have owners and then support. So those are the owners of those tasks.
Is it all under one umbrella, or are they actually separate businesses?
Businesses.
People benefit separately.
Yep. Okay. Separate businesses. We don't do any outside management. We don't do any outside construction. We don't do any outside acquisitions. All of it just feeds our own portfolio.
And you have your in-house property management.
Correct.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
And you do run it as I know you just said it, but as its own self-functioning business. So the individuals that are running that are incentivized to make it profitable, as well as run properties well, as well as the oversight from the fund manager, you, to make sure that it fits within the stipulations of the actual the asset needs. Yeah, the PPM. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay. Is the script kind of like a diagram? If they enter this, go to this. If they enter this, go to that's a great. And did you help develop that, or?
Yeah. So what I haven't said is real estate is a new venture for me. So I started
you're doing terrible. You should probably switch ventures.
I know. I'm thinking about being an attorney, but I heard that's rough.
Let me tell you about it for 10 years.
No, I have some good attorneys. I'm not going to compete. But no, I only really started holding real estate in 2019.
Oh, wow.
So it's been 5 years that we've and grown our own portfolio.
So before that, you consider yourself just a transactional business person?
Yeah. So my background is really building and selling businesses. Okay. And I bought, built and sold 7 businesses in the last 25 years. It was in 2016. I was involved in an accident, lost my vision in one eye, and decided I needed to change. Like I felt at that moment what's the opposite of invincible? Vincible?
You were invincible.
I was vincible.
Mortal?
Thank you. I felt like I was at risk because I couldn't work for a long time. And now that I can't see, it was tough to do some of the things that I was doing before. And so my wife and I decided to start holding real estate. And it was at that point where we did wholesaling to start with and then switched to buy and hold. Now we do BRRRR value add stuff.
Who'd you learn how to wholesale from?
Sean Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yeah.
Flip to Freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I bought his course, $697. That's what I paid for.
Worth every dollar. Have you made more than $697 since?
That was the cheapest. That was the best investment I've ever made.
No doubt.
Really.
It was incredible.
We say that all the time. I mean, it's amazing how much pushback you hear from people in our space who are like, why would I ever pay for coaching or groups? It's like, it's not even.
So you just reminded me what I was going to say. Sorry. The script, bringing this back to the script. My first business was a franchise. So when I was 28, I bought a retail construction franchise. It's now called Ace Handyman. So if you guys know Turner Schenzel, he runs Ace Handyman, and they're here.
I've seen Ace Handyman.
Yeah. So I started that franchise here in 2003, and in a very short period of time became the number one franchise in the country. There's 150 locations. And I remember speaking in front of our annual convention, and I'm 28 years old, looking out in the audience, seeing people that had been in business longer than I had been on the planet, saying, why am I up here? Afterwards, they're treating me like a celebrity. And they would all ask, how did you do it? And I just simply said, I followed the process. Like, they laid out the recipe. I just followed it. Mm-hmm. And so that has stuck with me. And so now everything we do is built like a franchise. So we have a playbook for literally everything. I literally yesterday sat down and edited about 40 pages of a playbook.
For a script?
Well, there's scripts included.
Yeah, okay.
But it's the whole process of, like, I need to be able to hand it to you, Chris, and say, here's how we do what we do. Because then I can start to track how it works compared to what the script says and then make adjustments. But if it's all in my head, how do they know what to do?
Yeah.
It's all process, and you guys get that stuff. But that's how the script what the genesis of why we do the scripts. Because I can't scale unless I have it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, we've come across this problem, continue to come across this problem as the visionary, the founders, and the individuals that have all the information in their head. And then I think early on, so we just started doing traction EOS. We'll be on our third quarterly soon. But
how do you like it, by the way?
We like it. I would say we've seen, a 25, 45 degree change in like our business.
Good.
Everybody knowing their roles. It also points out deficiencies, areas for improvement, and really points out individuals' talents. Their accountability. But
and we have a good leader. Sorry to interrupt you. We have a shout out to Blake. We have
Blake Berkey. He does a great job. He's with Well Spent. He does a fantastic job on it.
So I'm in a group with Gino Wickman. It's
really?
It's a strategic coach. You guys have heard Dan Sullivan?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Who Not How.
Do you like that?
I do. Yeah, I do like it. It's great.
Because I just finished his. What's his most recent one?
10X is easier than 2X.
Yeah.
That's a great book. Yeah. All of his books are phenomenal.
They're so like what I love about them is they're just
simple,
pedestrian. Like I can take it and run it. Let's go.
That's what I need too. So, but you're liking that that guides you on how to run your own business then, basically?
The strategic coach. So they give us thinking tools. So when, as leaders, like you said it, it's all in our head. And so, the mystery of communication is the illusion it has occurred, right? Like I told you that. Well, no, you didn't, or I heard it differently. So instead of it being verbal, I write it down. And so that the thinking tools help me write better, help me write better playbooks, help me get it out of my head.
Okay, so you started in wholesaling, kind of shifting gears to where you are now. When you said you're going to buy and hold I think you explained the reason why of not sure your physical capabilities and wanting passive income is my assumption.
That's right.
Of something to take care of the family if I can't being work. Mortal if you can't work. And I think that's right. That's how I started, is like, if I get hit by the bus, like I want to make sure the family's okay.
Yeah.
That they have something there, that they'll be struggling. If I'm incapacitated, they'll be able to, survive on these funds, because it really is, next to shelter and food. I mean, money is the basic core function of just like general functionality. It's certainly not the most important thing, but it's basically like getting out of bed in the morning. You need to do it.
Is it easier with, or is life easier with or without?
Much
That's
easier.
My question, right? If it's easier with.
Much easier with. So when you started to buy and hold, what was your process there? Because you had already had a successful wholesaling business. What did that look like? What type of assets were you targeting? And kind of what were some of the initial problems you came across as you started growing this? Because the initial growing phase of going from like 10 units to 100 units to now you have how many units?
We're at 400,
400. And then how many syndicated?
1,000.
1,000. So 1,400 rental units. That's a lot. There becomes a lot of complexity during that entire time.
You know better than most.
Bigger is not always better, or bigger is not easier. I know people say that, and maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, but there's just different things that start occurring and different individuals that you need to involve that you would never have to do on smaller projects.
Yeah, for sure. I think to go back to Dan Sullivan, he says all entrepreneurs are rugged individualists. And we have this ability, this willpower to push through things that a lot of people can't tolerate. And that serves us to start things and to grow things. And then we get to a certain scale, to your point, where it's like, my rugged individualism is just pissing everybody off because I can't do everything and I'm dropping all these balls. So then you try to, bring in some people to integrate the things, and then you realize you need EOS. I mean, you're tracking exactly the way you need to develop it.
No pun intended.
To have as Dan would say, a self-managing business. And to get there is a ton of work and effort, and you have to decide, is it worth it? And most people have a price, as Ed Milet would say, like, I'm making enough, I'm done. I like his saying, max out, what's possible. So that's really what drives us, is to say, what can we do? What we're put here for a reason. We just started doing real estate. If I apply the principles and tools of the businesses I've built in the past, how far can we go with this thing? So when we went from wholesaling to buy and hold, all of the wholesale deals were purchased with the idea of being sold to a flipper. So all the math was done as if we were the flipper. And I had done flipping before. I had a construction company, the handyman business.
That helps.
It does. And so I'm a licensed general contractor to this day. But we would have a crew of guys that, during the winter time or during the holidays, people didn't want them in their homes. So we'd send them to a flip house. And that was just to keep the guys busy, because come spring, I need the best trades. I don't want them to be, scattered, because that's retail season, it's where we're making our money. So that's the only reason I ever did flips. I didn't run the math like I was going to make the money with the flip. If I just broke even on a flip, it was as I had a different motivation.
Just to keep your individuals.
That's it. Yeah. So then when we started to underwrite for wholesaling, we were underwriting as if it was going to a flipper. So we had a goal sheet and the same math. And then we said, okay, if these are the margins these guys are making, then we can do a buy and hold with the same math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and just burr out of it, because typically you're looking for that 30% margin or so.
That's exactly right. Yep. So the math all made sense. The buy and hold made sense. To be honest with you guys, I was completely ignorant about banking, and had never really been a big debt guy until I got into real estate and had to learn it.
Who taught you to be comfortable with that?
A really close friend of mine who's now passed. We were business partners for a period of time, and he kind of walked me through the math, and it made sense. Mm-hmm. So it made me comfortable to do it. And we got introduced to, now we're dealing with dozens of different banks, and you have to.
When your friend was discussing it, and this is, I think, how I just try to describe it to individuals, is that it's basically arbitraging cash.
It is.
And you're getting the delta.
That's exactly right. Yeah. No, I would say especially if you burr correctly and you end up with none of your own money in it, it's magic. So it doesn't always work, but when it does, it's pretty cool.
And we've told that story many times on how we've been successful at doing that. And, a lot of people, even though I feel like we're authentic, it sounds good to be true.
It does.
They're like, wait a second, you own it for nothing in it. And
yeah.
I have a couple CFAs or CFPs, in my family, and they hate the phrase, now you're in it for nothing, or infinite returns. They hate that phrase, but it happens.
I was just at a strategic coach session, and I mentioned an infinite return to a guy, and he's like, it's never infinite. Like, you can always calculate the return. I'm like, well, when I had money in it, I could calculate it, but now I can't because I don't have any money in it.
I have to have that conversation all the time.
So anyways, that's really where the magic is to me, and the excitement to me to build something at scale is that opportunity for the infinite return, for sure.
So your fund, that must be a living open fund?
Yeah. So are you guys familiar with a company called Evestor?
Mm-mm.
So we are it's not a blind pool. It's an evergreen fund, but it's treated like a syndication. So we can raise money all the time, but each deal within the fund can stand on its own. Mm-hmm. And so our investors can pick and choose which asset they want to invest in. Mm-hmm. They like apartment A, but not apartment B. Their money from the fund can go into A and not go into B.
Do they have minimums, or I guess walk me through how it works? Is somebody putting in $100,000 that sits there and is garnering a % return, or what is it?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Alex exactly what it is today. It's about 3% if they put it into our bank account. Mm-hmm. We'll pay them about 3% on their money to sit it there. When a deal, it's like if you guys see a Schwab account or a TD Ameritrade account where you have an online balance.
Yep.
It's the same. So they log into the portal, they see their balance, they see the deals, they get to decide which deals to deploy capital into. When there's a return, it goes back to their virtual balance. It still stays in our bank account, but it goes back to their virtual balance. And if they decide to make a withdrawal, they ask, and then we ship the money out.
So it's liquid.
If their virtual balance, it is liquid. Yes. If it's deployed in a deal, then no.
Obviously not. Yeah. And is it your minimums? Does that change for each deal?
We're 100,000 minimum to invest in the fund. Mm-hmm. And then the minimums are different depending upon the deal.
Makes sense. No, that's interesting.
That is interesting.
The good thing about that, you guys, is, and I would encourage you to look at it, is it's 1 ppm.
Yeah.
And there's just deal disclosures on each property.
We actually are launching a fund as well. But at this moment, there's not a pick and choose type approach. However, we are paying higher in interest once they give us the money.
Yeah.
So there's the pro and con.
Sure.
But I like that idea as well. That's very interesting.
It may be worth, like, if you want an introduction to a Vestor, they're great people. Started by a guy from Microsoft.
Is that the platform they invest into?
Vestor is the company name.
So we've been speaking with, you've heard of Juniper Square?
I have.
And then have you heard of NAV?
I have not.
Okay, those are the two we've been speaking with. Avestor?
Avestor.
Okay.
They're based in Portland.
But that's just the platform they log into.
It's a platform, but they're fund managers.
Yep, exactly. So they'll calculate everybody's.
Yeah, and they will do, one of the cool features to you guys is we can close a deal with our own money and then backfill.
Oh, cool.
And they do a per day, what you make per day. And they calculate that for you. If an investor invests in multiple deals, they get 1K1. There's a lot of benefits. The deal disclosure is 2 pages, so it's simple to explain to somebody instead of an 80-page PPM.
PPM.
Yeah. So there's some advantage, and it's relatively inexpensive. I paid $18,000, $17,500, and that included the attorney.
But they still have to sign or read the PPM.
They do.
Yeah.
They can't go into they can't even go on the platform unless they're accredited, and that requires them to sign.
Nice.
Yeah.
So in what order did you start the fund? Was that immediately, or did you start using your own capital when you started buying these 400 units of buy and hold?
We had a couple of light bulb moments. I was thinking I had to use all my own money. Mm-hmm. So wholesaling is a great way to create a bunch of cash. So we use that to start with. And then if you burr out of it, you've got, rinse and repeat. Well, then we learned about private lending. And so there's probably 10 folks now that we get private lending from. And it's, a lot cheaper than hard money. So where a hard money loan might be 12, 13, 14%, we're paying 8 or 9 in this market. And so it's cheaper money for us. We treat it as cash. We use it to buy and rehab the property. Once it's stable, we go to a bank, pay them out, rinse and repeat. So the private lending was a huge part. At any given time, there's probably, if I had to guess, maybe $1 million sitting there that's available to us. Mm-hmm. And so that gives us tremendous leverage. Mm-hmm. We just won a deal yesterday, for example, that they had an offer that was higher, but we were cash closed in 7 days.
Absolutely.
So I love that power to be able to do that, because otherwise you're a prisoner of hope if you got to go through traditional means.
That's how we're getting our deal for $800,000 less than they wanted.
Yeah, exactly. It was cash close in 14 days.
On a big deal like that, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. The leverage that gives you is incredible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Will you also use bank financing with that capital as well? Or will you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
For sure. So you use it as a down payment, and
that's right.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the type of assets you're looking at? I mean, for us, we're 98% of what we purchase is value add multifamily real estate. And that value add can come from multiple different components. Yeah. All sorts of different directions, adding, rubs, cam fees, additional units, but, finding ways to add value to that property and increase its NOI.
We're swimming in the same pool because of our business of acquisition, construction, management, and fundraising all in one. We're vertically integrated. We lose our advantage once we need a third-party property manager. We lose our advantage when we need to hire a contractor. Mm-hmm. And we lose our advantage when we have to buy with brokers.
Yes.
So we try to buy direct, we try to do our own construction, do our own management, and then all those little efficiencies just yield a better return for our investor. So it's a little more attractive. I don't know how you would do it if we had to hire construction, we had to hire management. I just think I don't have that paradigm in my head at this point. Mm-hmm. So at this point, it's all value add stuff.
Okay. And that's all family members. So maybe it's just a question that was occurring to me this morning, just based on your book and kind of your experience. What's a really difficult situation or situation you've been in on this journey in the past few years of, I don't know whether it's with family or just shifting paradigms from wholesaling to buy and hold to fund. But I know we've had plenty of I don't want to call them pivot moments, but just moments of okay, this is different than what we've experienced. So now it's time to treat it differently. Yeah. And you basically open up another, vortex of your brain of just problems and solutions. So,
well, we always have this great idea at the beginning, right? This great vision of what it's going to be. And then, we get punched in the mouth, and you look back and you say, some of the things went okay, but most of it didn't.
Yeah.
So it's this iterative process that So I've got hundreds of examples. I'd give you one that I haven't shared publicly, although I did. I think I shared it in the book. My son Luke. Have you guys heard that story about when so I'll just tell you the story. He's in college at 19, and this was in 2019, and he's going to Lincoln. He comes home and he says, "I don't want to go to school." And while I, today don't use my degree, I have a teaching degree. I don't use it day to day. I like education. I think there's value in it for a lot of reasons. And so that was a hard conversation for me. I was wed to this idea. Mm-hmm. This is an example of me fighting my own narrative. And then I had just started reading or consuming more of this content. And so it was still fresh, and I wasn't really good with the chords yet. And so, I kept practicing with Luke. And it helped me navigate a really, really difficult conversation. He ended up dropping out of school, works full-time in the business. Today, he'll be 23 next week. And I don't want to speak for him, but I think he has about 70 units at 23 years old.
Wow.
And and I'm in no college debt.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool example of how I was able to get out of my own way and say, instead of saying, you're going to finish school because I want you to.
Yeah, that's tough.
It is, because I didn't want him to drop out and then fail. Mm-hmm. Then what is he going to do? He'd just be living in a van down by the river. You know what I mean?
Might not be a bad life. Might not be a bad life.
Depends on the van.
Yeah, exactly.
Even what I know now, from what I know now, I don't know if I would have gone to school. Certainly would have gone to law school.
Yeah.
But even knowing that, it'd be hard for me not to push my own children to go to school.
Well, and who do you, me too, for the same reasons I'm sure that are in your head. Like, who do you meet? How do you do hard things you don't want to do? Prove to yourself you can stay with something.
Discipline.
Like, don't be a quitter.
Yeah,
right?
discipline. Absolutely.
It's all, not all, but that's the majority of what drove me to say, I want you to do this. Looking back, I'm really grateful that I had the tools, the never split the difference and tactical empathy tools to be able to stay present, to hear him and express understanding, and then to start to collaborate. By the way, you guys, the jobs I had him doing were terrible. He was doing demo on jobs. He's doing trash outs. He's doing driving for dollars. What are the worst things I can have this kid do? Because if for one semester he can survive this, he might go back to school.
Yeah, scare him back into school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but he didn't. He stuck with it, and
Good
so
for him.
It's been a fun journey. Now he underwrites all of our deals. I see him at 23 years old teaching brokers how to underwrite deals.
Wow,
large multifamily. It's incredible.
Good for him.
So how do you balance that? I mean, I have a 4, 6, and 9-year-old, and I speak about real estate all the time to them. I bring them to projects. I'm telling my son, as soon as he can push a mower, he should be buying a mower and starting his business and getting his buddies involved. And once again, not trying to push, but plant the seed of, you could be 18 with, probably $250,000 in your bank account and have a successful business. And you can choose to go to college and have it paid for and move on with that. But it's a hard conversation. So how do you think that this evolved? I'll leave it at that. How do you think this evolved?
Well, I think it's, first of all, in my own personal journey, giving myself permission to disappoint my parents or a teacher, or not take the advice from somebody that loves me, because something in my own heart was driving me more. The courage it took me to honor that is hard to even express. But once I realized, I remember after my first business, this franchise, somebody told me, you're an entrepreneur. And I'm like, I had never even heard the word before. What is an entrepreneur? Well, you're an entrepreneur. I looked it up and I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. It was a light bulb moment for me to say, God made me to do this. I go to these strategic coach meetings. There's 40 people in the room. We're all the same person. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. These are my people. This is my tribe. We're all crazy, doing stupid stuff. It's hard. And we get each other. So I've now embraced it. But so to say it's evolved for me is really to say that now I'm more aware of how did God make each of my kids? Because if they have the Bible says to raise your kid up in the way they should go. When they grow old, they will not depart from it. So what way should they go? As a parent, Is it the way I want them to go? Or is it the way God made them to go? What is that bent, that natural inclination? And so that's for me what really drives me with the kids. I expose them to all of it. You know, do you want to go to school? Do you want to buy a mower and push? Like, it's going to suck for 7 summers and you're going to hate your life, but 7 summers are going to pass no matter what.
Exactly.
And if you did this for 7 summer or whatever it is, you'd be in a much different spot. And it's allowing them to determine for themselves, you know, who they are, how God made them, what are they wired to do, and try as a dad to, going back to that conversation with Luke, to be self-aware enough to say, maybe this is for you. And although it doesn't satisfy me as your dad, like, I really want you to go to school.
Yeah.
But if that's really what God made you to do, then I better honor that.
How was that conversation, not to get too personal, like, did you and your wife approach that differently?
There was no opportunity for that to happen because it was Luke and I in my office, and it was anger, tears. It was a very highly emotional conversation, and it was a hard conversation.
I'm sure.
And by the way, just as a side note, these tools only work if the other person is reasonable. and he was so emotional.
Yeah.
That and I remember him saying, "Stop using these fucking tactics on me. Like, I just want you to be my dad right now." And
that hurts.
Oh,
That's hard to hear. That's really hard.
yeah. And I will tell you now, guys, watching Luke use these tools, it's the most respectful way. By far. It is the most respectful way to communicate with somebody, to be collaborative, to be curious, to really be interested. And it yields so much better fruit. But to bring that back to your original question, I think that it was a journey of self-awareness for me first, like fighting against the grain of what my parents or my people I loved were telling me to do something I felt God pulling me to, but I didn't know what it was. Not until I even had a business did I know I was an entrepreneur.
Right.
And so now it's just exposing and saying, what is this for you? Myra and I have just had this conversation a month ago of this, we're entrepreneurial. So everything we do is iterative. Nothing that we start is ever perfect. It's just like we steer the bike as we start rolling it, but we got to start rolling it. Like, we can't figure it all out first. And that's hard for people.
Very hard.
That's part of our challenge now is, can you work in an entrepreneurial environment?
Can you embrace change? That's to your point. That's one of our core values, is embracing change, because things will never be the same. Because if it is the same, and if we operated the same way we did 4 or 5 years ago,
oh my gosh,
it would be an absolute mess. And we probably change things. I think Chris and I have these conversations every quarter and make iterative changes. Maybe
change stuff
all the time. And back to entrepreneurial, and it really is having that belief of the future that you can bring that to at some point the present.
Yeah.
Without any certainty.
Zero
certainty. Like, especially when you start and there is nothing proven.
Oh my gosh. I wish I could let you in my brain for a second to know what I'm feeling and going through with all this right now, because it's so true. We have a cash flow business that runs, it's easy, boring. And then we have this new business that's hard. We started the fund a year ago. We're bumping our head. We're making all these mistakes. We're like, oh, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
Driving everybody crazy, testing our will. That's where I want to be.
Yeah.
Although it hurts me when I see somebody I love, literally in tears saying, I don't know if I can do this. And I ask myself, is it worth it? Like, if you care about your employees, it's one thing, but when it's your son or your sister-in-law or your father-in-law, or it's extra.
So how do you navigate, and how do you motivate, this gentleman I was talking to yesterday? I'd call him a mentor, it ends up turning into a therapy session, and he started talking about his past when, he was very intense and he did everything intensely. And, some people would consider it anger. He was like, I was never angry. I was just intense.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can relate to that, because I have trouble turning that off. Sometimes I go home and I'm in the same, like, go, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's what's getting done. And it's getting done now. And in 30 minutes, we'll do X, Y, Z. And there's, different ways to approach it. So I know it's family members, and I know you treat it a little bit differently, but there's different strategies there, and how you determine whether you need to motivate or resolve, or what are some of those things that you're doing during those, because there are points where it's not the right fit. And that goes back to, you asking your son, or you expecting your son to go to college, and with that predetermined mindset of, well, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so another belief that serves us and sometimes makes it more difficult for us is we believe in permanent relationships. So we don't, when we bring somebody in, we're planning for 100 years from now.
Yeah.
You guys. So like the business, to get to that, the business has all these needs. It's going to require a lot of stuff. And then you have the people that come to do the stuff, right? The needs of the business are separate from the needs of the individual, but they both have to be considered to see how far will they be integrated into it, or how far will they be, they might come in and say, I'm going to go full time. And then they say, this sucks. I just want to dabble in it and do a part-time. That's tough when it's family, because it's a permanent relationship, right? And so we're always navigating the needs of the business and trying to manage the tension of the needs of these individuals. If it's an employee hired off a Craigslist or, a referral from a friend, it's easier to be more utilitarian. And so for us, it takes a lot of extra time and a lot of extra effort and care. And we frankly say, hey, the needs of the business are the needs of the business. They're going to be there whether you're here or not. We want you to be here. We don't own you. We just want you to participate to the extent that you want to the extent that it serves you, right? As long as it serves the business too, we'll meet you where you're at. The challenge with that is it's hard at times to say, you got to get this done. Even though you said this is as far as you're going to be integrated. Well, guess what? We call it, the business is a baby. The baby just pooped. Somebody just changed his diaper, right? Get in there. I know you said you didn't want to, but nobody else is available. Go do that.
Yeah.
Right. And as entrepreneurs, that's logical to us to jump in.
I'm interested in how I had mentioned earlier with being empathetic and with employees or people we're working with, if they're not performing, or I struggle sometimes to push people, maybe because I am too empathetic. And I'm realizing that from your conversation here that you're put in positions that are even more difficult because they're working for you / with you, but they're family. So how do you get person A, whether it's an employer of ours or a family member of yours, to just do their damn job?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, this is a full circle conversation because it comes back to the standard. Like, what do we write down? What is our playbook? Now we can iterate that, but we all agreed this is the playbook we're going to execute. And if this play doesn't work at all, we're going to run it until we prove it doesn't work. And then we're going to change it. But you cannot, as an individual who's going to run this play, choose to run a different play. I don't care if you're my mom. I don't care if you're my wife, my son. That's the play we're running. If it doesn't work, we'll take a time out and we'll say, hey, change the play. Play sucks. But we have to write it down and come up with a standard that we're all agreeing to. And it puts a much finer point on it for me as a dad, as a husband, as a son-in-law, to say, this is how we're going to do it. And this is our standard. Because if I don't, then the relationship risk is so much greater.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
You're setting expectations. It's easy to measure to something.
It's easy to measure to something. And especially when it's somebody you love so much, like, I just want to make sure they know exactly what we're trying to do here. And so I have a different level of motivation to make sure that this playbook is good. At least the first draft. We always call it the shitty first draft because it's never what we're going to end up with. But I always try to make it, something we can run with.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make it easier, but that's one way we try to do it.
So curious. I'm in a mastermind with Brandon Turner, and he's brilliant, and he's doing a really good job compartmentalizing, optimizing, and doing multiple different facets of basically every area of his life. That includes with a family, with a spouse, et cetera. Are there any things that you do with your family that's separate from the business or structure with you and your wife, et cetera, that maybe...
Yeah. So that's a great question. We've introduced this idea, in the world we're trained in chronological time, right? So you go to school at 8, you have recess at 9, you go to lunch at 11.
Drives me nuts.
You come home at 3, right? You go to school for so long, and then you have Christmas break, then whatever. So that chronos time, you get where I'm going.
Oh yeah.
We've introduced kairos time, which is for such a time as this. It's time to plant. It's time to harvest. The baby's coming. It's time to have a baby, right? That's not chronological. There's a season for it. And so the chronos time paradigm says you work hard and you earn a break, right? You work for 50 weeks, you get 2 off. That's the world view, or at least the US view.
65 years.
That's it.
You get to retire.
That's it.
School for...
That's it.
Yep.
So in order for us to do what we do, we have to say, first, that's not for me. And then say, what's the alternative? Well, for us, it's kairos. So we say, as a family, we're going to schedule free time first. So the first thing we put on our calendars is the days that I'm going to do things that energize and excite me. Well, why would you do that? You haven't earned it. Well, I do it because I can't show up as the best version of myself unless I feel my bucket is full. Does that make sense? The second day we schedule is a buffer day. And a buffer day, and this is all Dan Sullivan, by the way. The second is a buffer day, which is after a free day, I don't have the ability to flip a switch and to say, I'm going to make money and just focus on getting things done. So I use a buffer day to plan or to clean up messes. And then every week I have focus days. And focus days are days that I'm doing things that move the needle. And for us, that's 2 things. Either directly making me money or directly removing a barrier that is preventing me from making money. When I put it in that sequence, free days, buffer days, focus days, I'm liberated to really be present in each of those days. So on a free day, for example, I have 0 guilt being on the boat with my family. I don't think about work. I have 0 guilt about, not getting a deal done. On my focus day, I'm not getting on the boat. And the family knows it, right? I'm in meetings. I'm doing things that are moving the needle. And so just that perspective of what are our free days, what are our buffer days, what are our focus days, and we try to align those as a family, it helps us to exist together and have some semblance of normalcy. Without that, if everyone's working on their own chronos time, everybody's schedule is different. Just that mess of 12 people, 12 schedules, that alone, how do you ever get together? So we had to say, okay, we're gonna shift it.
So what does that look like? Is it a weekly, monthly? Does it shift? Are you actually planning it out, or?
We meet every Monday on a buffer day, and
which is the best day to do a buffer day.
It is for me.
I agree 100% because you're going to be following up from problems.
Yep.
If you're doing anything. Meetings are completely ineffective because typically people are unprepared.
Yeah.
And
they just came off the weekend.
They just came off the weekend. And although we may be working on the weekend, if you're dealing with individuals that take weekends off, it's kind of this whole ramp up.
It is.
Well, let me get back to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
it's a waste of
time.
day.
Yeah.
So let's not waste it. Let's make it. Let's just call it what it is.
Yep.
Right. So that's that we have the same thought on that, Colin. So we meet every Monday as a leadership. So it all rolls up. Every leader meets with their team. They come to us, and the meeting is very simple. It's 3 things. What are we proud of that we got done last week? Give me 3 things. What are the 3 crucial things that we're going to get done this week to move the needle? And what are the meetings that we need to set right now with the people around this table or others so we can get it on our calendar so we're not trying to schedule things later? It takes us an hour. There's 6 of us at the leadership meeting. They bring their people. And as long as there's alignment, it's an hour meeting.
Are you scribing this, or is there somebody note taking? And
we all have our own books. We all use the same planner.
Yep. Okay.
It's probably similar to an EOS planner because Gino is good friends with Dan.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's how we set it up, and it just becomes part of our ritual, I guess.
That's amazing.
Those leadership meetings are on Mondays, not
Correct.
but those are also considered your buffer days?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're working on your buffer days. You're just...
Absolutely. Yeah. So a buffer day is to clean up messes from the previous
But
week.
a scheduled meeting.
It's scheduled. Yep. And it's to plan your next week, plan your focus days. And we do it together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because what happens is, especially for me, there's so many things in my head that come in and I'm like, okay, I got to get this out to the team. Well, when do I do it? Like I'm going to have a meeting just to tell you this new bright idea I have. Let's just do it on a buffer day. And if there's something that we need to exercise a little bit, we'll set another meeting. But generally it's just roses, 3 roses. You know, what are the 3 things we're going to get done this week? What meetings do we need to have?
Nice.
And it's not perfect, but it at least gives us a framework that can get us all on the same page.
No, that the Kairos time is something I have been adamantly struggling with, fighting Chronos time. And I probably fight Chronos time for my entire life. And that's probably why I quit my job, is when I was told that I could no longer take unpaid time off. I basically just like lost it. I was like, this is not a real way to live. This is absolutely astounding. That
Are you even employable anymore? If somebody said, I'm going to give you a job, how hard would it be for you to take a job?
you know, I think about doing it just for the fun of it, like trying to go up to like apply for some really high up job and seeing what that would look like. But I would fizzle out really quickly. Or people couldn't. I don't think people would like it if there'd be a different level of intensity. I don't think I'm employable. But the Kairos time, and that's something I've thought about. And, you know, my kids all go to school and everything, but I've brought this up of thinking about hiring, you know, my own teachers, getting them on their own schedules, because I do feel it's ridiculous of like, we are set up for this and there's so many more experiences in the world. And that's why I'm pretty much the first one to say, okay, it's Thursday and Friday. I know you guys have school, but we're going to go do something now at maybe museums. We're going to have some new experience, but I think the value in that and what you get out of that is significantly more, because we are not meant to just live on this like up down roller coaster. It's not, you know. I was talking with one of the Corey brothers the other day, and I was like, we were just talking that by Friday, we're actually like, we're hitting we're starting to max out acceleration. Like we're feeling in like a good cruising speed, and then things slow down, and just like, that's why it's hard to turn it off. It's like, it'd almost be a better schedule for entrepreneurs. We just go for 3 weeks in a row and then we take a week off and recharge. I mean, because lots of times, I mean, once we start going, we want to keep going because it's exciting for us. There's enjoyment in it, and you're actually solving the problem. So
well, I think you illustrate a really good point. The double-edged sword of entrepreneurship is it energizes and excites us so much that we consider that it's not work. It's a free flow environment, right? You're in flow and you're enjoying it and you lose track of time. For me, that's where relationships get hurt. So I put the structure in, not necessarily for me, but so that my family can know, hey, this is a free day, and you know, Dad's actually going to be available. You know, he's not just going to work nonstop, because that is, when you love what you do, it's not work. And so it can spill over real easy. Yeah.
The first 3 to 5 years, it's not as bad now. And it's because I've made a commitment. And I think, you know, similar, it's not as written down, but it's, you know, every single sport I'm attending. And that's always been the case. You know, I'm going to coach when I can. But also to people listening, and you probably experienced this as well, the first couple years, you just got to get it done, especially when you're solo.
Well, if it's considered a baby, think about it.
That's a really great analogy.
Not sleeping, needs to eat. I don't care if you're hungry.
That's the best.
Baby's got to eat, you know? And so it's like, I don't want to, when we start a business, like, do I want to have another kid? Do I want to have another kid? Because this is a lot of work.
That's so funny, because starting a new business always sounds like fun, but then like the more you have started them, you realize the amount and the intensity of the work, and that it doesn't go away.
It doesn't. That baby's not going anywhere, dude. Like, it just needs more stuff.
I know.
Right? It needs more time. And it's fun when they get to a point where they can walk or kind of take care of themselves.
We've learned that the hard way.
Yeah. Speaking of time, it's almost time, but I'm curious if you have a question, but I sometimes hate this question when I get it, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
Thanks.
Yep.
Worst question ever.
Yeah. What are what is your goal, or what do you want to be remembered as? Because, I get asked, what's the end game? And I give two answers, the cookie cutter answer of dollars and this amount and time, et cetera. And then there's another answer, but then I give something different. What is that for you? What's your...
Yeah. It's really, it's rooted in, a story that happened when I was 21. My dad, I'm one of 10 kids. So we have a big family. I'm the youngest boy. There's 5 boys and 5 girls. And my dad died when I was 21. And my mom came to me. And by the way, he was a business owner, had a body shop, and well-known and respected, really good guy. To this day, I could go back to Cedar County and if I want to hunt pheasants and walk up to somebody's door and say, I'm Cy Kramer's son. And they still call me, I'm a grown man, they still call me Cy's boy. And he's been gone forever. To give you a perspective, like, he's a really good human. However, the day he died, my mom came to me and she said she didn't have $600 to pay the backhoe operator to dig his grave. And the look on her face of fear, I mean, she's grieving. She just lost her husband. He died in our living room. And to see that fear kind of cemented in me this idea that I have to right this wrong. And so that's been what's driven me this entire time, is how do I ensure that my family, no one in my family will ever experience the pain of being broke. So to answer your question directly, it's what's possible. I'm a steward. I feel like God placed that mantle on me, and that's mine to carry. While I have breath, I'm going to carry it. So what's possible? I don't know. I don't have a number. What I hope is when I'm gone, I hope it's a great grandkid that's eulogizing me and just says, I'm grateful for the decisions that Grandpa made.
I love that.
Because this world it's going to get, I think, crazier.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think it's going to get more normal. I don't think
the debates tonight.
Yeah, I know. Which I told my wife on a walk this morning. I'm actually excited to watch this debate.
Me too.
I want to see.
Me too.
But I just want to take more and more of the world's influence out of my family's life, because it has not served me at all. The world's influence hasn't served me. I've had to go against the grain in almost everything. And so to make it a little bit easier for them, although there's a caveat, and I preach this to my kids, like, I want you to do hard things. Mm-hmm. It isn't so that you struggle for me. Like, I'm not trying to prove a point to me for me. Mm-hmm. You're trying to prove it to yourself. Like, who is it? I think it's Ed Milet says that confidence comes from making and keeping a promise to yourself. So bet on yourself and deliver. Then you're going to have confidence. And so I want them to do hard things, but I want them when they need a loan, I want them to come to my bank.
Yeah.
Right. And I want the interest rate to be a little more favorable. And I want the terms to be, so they can be successful.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're trying to do. That's why we're planning for 100 years. And my hope is that, that great grandchild, and I say that because I hope I'm still around for a long time. But I hope they say thank you.
That's beautiful. That really is. That was amazing. Just something that I asked a friend the other day who owns a bunch of businesses and restaurants in town. It was a difficult day I was dealing with, and we both show up at the gym, and I'm like, and his name's Tony, and he's been in business for 21 years, thousands of employees, really successful. And I'm just like, man, when does this get easier? He's like, when you stop wanting to be the best. It's like, wow.
That's something.
Wow. Like, you're absolutely right. And to your point about keeping going, if you have another breath, there's something else to do. Mm-hmm. We're put here to do something.
Yeah.
So what? It's not why, it's why not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this again, go back to Kairos or Chronos, time to retire. Like, that doesn't even,
that's why the end game, I hate that word.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. It doesn't. Like, if you do what you love, why not do it for until you fall over?
Right.
Yeah.
So I appreciate this conversation. It's been really helpful for me because the more I talk about what we do, it helps underscore and affirm, I guess.
Yeah.
That what I'm doing is for the right reason. And I don't necessarily need that from you. I need it from me.
Yeah. Well, just selfishly, we get a lot from these. I mean,
we do.
I mean, every single time we talk to an individual like you that's as accomplished, but also just is doing things that we are not implementing, it reinforces just us being better. I mean, just every day, I think the goal is just to be better than yesterday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they say iron sharpens iron. So there might be sparks, but we're both getting better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Michael, where can people find you, and just give a little blurb about your book, which I'm really excited to read.
I didn't come here to promote the book.
I know you didn't, but I'm promoting it. But if not, I'm going to promote it for you, which I still will. But
thank you. I do think I'm going to sign this one for Chris.
There you go. That's perfect.
No, they can find me. The best way is probably just to email me, Michael at Freed by Real Estate.
Cool.
We have a YouTube channel I just learned that's Freed by Real Estate. We're on Facebook, or I'm on Facebook, Michael Kramer.
Awesome.
LinkedIn. So
awesome.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you guys.
This is great.
I've enjoyed it. Appreciate
Cool.
it.